Hey, I'm back. This is Chandler for Melda Production, and today I'm going to break down this song Epilogue. This is the epilogue of a previous song called Sewazuki, and I'm going to show you how I did this whole song basically. It's very short, so if you haven't checked it out, please give it a listen. This one I was inspired by Botanica, basically, a new music genre that I wasn't familiar with, but really kind of, I heard it and I liked it, and I was like, let me try to do something in the same vein. I don't know if this is exactly it. Some people might say, hey, that's not really Botanica or whatever, but I was inspired by it and I tried to do something a little bit similar, at least in my own style. So let's go over, I'm going to go through the probably least interesting stuff first, or the stuff that's probably the most familiar to you. The first lead guitar sound, I try to make an Alan Holdsworth style guitar sound. I use this AH lead preset. It should be in M Guitar Architect. It sounds like this. So if you have M Guitar Architect, you should have this. I don't think I changed much. Maybe the amp, I brought down the treble, the high mids a little bit, brought down the presence a little bit. I might have turned up the gain, I'm not sure. I have the cabinet, these settings, and I have this set to Fusion 4. I turned off the reverb on this because I'm using the reverb here. I use two separate ones. I have the short reverb and the long reverb. I'll turn these both on so you can kind of hear them off and on. So the reverbs just give it a little bit more depth. There's nothing really, too interesting about that. So let's move on here. Actually, I'll show you a few other things. I also put a compressor on there, like this. You can see the settings. For this, all I wanted to do is just kind of even out the sound so you could kind of hear every note. There's nothing too interesting about that. And here, I cut off some of the lows because that might interfere with some of the other instruments, and I boosted the highs a little bit above 1K, and that was just to make it cut through the mix a little bit better. There's nothing super interesting about that. So let's move on to the piano. It sounds like this. For this one, I used the Monastery Grand. I only used one mic. Maybe I might have let this on the default here. I think I boosted the air a little bit just so it cut through a little bit more. I boosted the treble with the enhancer, and that's about it. Everything else I left off. A little bit of the ambience is on, and I think I increased the gain for the high keys just because for this, I really wanted this to cut through. There's a lot of different things on here in this track, so I was like, I really need this to kind of shine through. After that, I just went into M Auto Dynamic EQ. I don't think I even used any of the dynamic features. I just cut off the lows and a little bit of the low mids there just so it doesn't get muddy. And then I went into the short and long reverb. And then I'm also using this, where it looks like, what is this for cicada? And this is the sound of cicada, just Foley. And basically I'm ducking the sound of the cicadas with the piano. So I'll get to that next. This one is, I think, fairly easy to understand. This is just Foley sound. I actually recorded this myself. It should be binaural, so it's 3D audio. If you have headphones on, you should be able to hear it all around you. So that's all it is. Since this is Botanica and it's supposed to be, organic, this is the organic sound I have. So I had that in there. I think this is most of the kind of easy stuff. The other thing is the bass. This is just basic super saw bass. Oh, this has the new Melda maybe theme on it. So for this, I have a slow attack because I don't want this, just coming in at the very beginning. I just kind of want to ease in there. And I have the oscillator here, 4 voices, slightly detuned, and I have a bit of a filter on there. So this is nothing particularly new or interesting. And for this, I just dropped some of the low mids because I felt like maybe this would get in the way. Nothing super interesting. I'm going to the short reverb also. I'll go over the short reverb. I'll do it afterwards, actually. And then finally, let's get to a little bit more interesting stuff, is this pad here. This is just a basic kind of super saw pad. Okay, maybe it's not quite so basic, but it's not particularly complicated. Actually, I didn't use anything in here I set the attack at 0. I used the envelopes in here. So I have an oscillator, 4 voices, detuned a bit, about 30% or so, and I just use a normal saw wave here. So that's not particularly interesting. For the other one, I did the same thing, except I moved it up to 8 voices, 40% detune. But what I did here is I moved this up an octave. So it's the same thing, just boosted up an octave and has more voices and a little bit more detuned. I think they're almost the same. Yeah, I used the random phase here. I think this sounds better personally. And I have 2 filters on here. The first one for the first oscillator here is 1.5 octaves above, 30% resonance. And the other one is 2 octaves above with 30% resonance. And I set the ratio to whatever sounded good. I thought about 40% sounds good. And then finally, I used this envelope. And you can use this if you don't want to use the global. I could have used the global here, but I was probably thinking, hey, maybe if I put something else here, I don't want this all to be affected by the global envelope. So you can just use this envelope here to just affect what you want. In this case, the things that are coming out of the ratio. Play it one more time. So I think this makes it kind of nice and airy. It's fairly simple. I don't have any effects on there. Only effects I have for this is I have this cutting off the low end. I'm doing a pretty kind of harsh low end cut here, and that's because I don't want this interfering with any of the low end anyplace else. So those are the more basic ones, but let's get into some of the, I guess, more advanced stuff. Let me see if I can undo this and not mess up everything. So here I have this guitar. At first, what I did is I recorded myself just playing, guitar chords, but I thought it was a little bit boring. I was going to do that instead of the piano. When I heard it, I was like, this guitar doesn't really sound good with the track. So I put pianos in, and I just kind of had this laying around. I was like, you know what? Maybe if I use M-Rhythmizer on this, I can make this more interesting. So I used M-Rhythmizer, and I also took a bandpass filter and cut off the lows and highs. So it sounds like this. Okay, I'm going to try to unfreeze this and hope it doesn't break everything. Maybe I've ruined this forever, but I'm doing it for you. You probably want to see this. So let's unfreeze it. Yeah, cool. So it went back to normal. You can see this is the M guitar setup I used. I used the Tulsa amp. I used this Radon cabinet and used a little bit of plate reverb there. Hopefully you can see my settings here if you care that much. M-Rhythmizer, I think this is the interesting part. I used General, but I used Mod 2, and I did this configuration using the step sequencer myself to try to find something that was good. I did this over 8 bars, I believe. Yeah, 8 bars. So you can kind of see what's happening as it moves down. I had to set the step sequencer very carefully so it hit the correct patterns that I wanted to, but you can see it going here. I basically did this by trial and error. Okay, you can stop now. So I did this by trial and error until I found something that sounded good to me. Then I put M Dynamics on here just so I could make sure everything is heard. And then finally, like I said, I put a bandpass filter on at 300 hertz and 360, and that or 3,600 hertz. And the reason is I wanted this to sound almost lo-fi. If I have it without the bandpass filter, it sounds hi-fi and it kind of gets in the way of everything, but this gives it a lo-fi vibe and it pulls it back and out of the way of the other instruments, which is what I wanted. Maybe when you heard this the first time, you may not have even noticed this in here. Most of the time, you're like, what was that? And that's the kind of thing I wanted with this. So that is the guitar. Let's get into the Granular pad. So I showed you the first pad. It sounds like this. But while that's playing, I have this other pad as well. So what this one is I just have, I use the envelope here. I'm trying to think of, did I use the globals or the envelope? I use the envelope a lot here, and I think it's because I wasn't sure when I was making these sounds and doing the sound design, do I want to use all 6 of these or do I just want to use a few? So I decided to use the envelope because that way if I want to have 2 of them using this envelope, 2 of them using the other ones, 1 of them using a different envelope, I can do that as opposed to setting it with the globals and then having to redo everything and add envelopes, etc. But anyways, don't care about that. Here we go into Granular Sampler 1. I'll pop this out so you can see it. What I did here is I have this, I had it set to a piano sound, and then what I'm doing is I'm adjusting the rate using an LFO, so the rate is getting faster and slower over time, and also the probability is decreasing over time. So it's starting, it should be really dense with grains, and then over time it will decrease. So let's see that. Actually, let's adjust the ratio. So now it's at 40%. I'll move it to 0%, so you're just hearing the piano. It sounds like this, and you can watch it down here. I forgot the most important part. I set it to reverse here to 100%, so all the grains are going backwards. That's why they're going from right to left. And also this boundary mode, it says continue at the end. There's different ways to do this. I like this one. If you use clip and lots of them hit that boundary, you're going to hear like a buzzing bzzz, like that. So I generally don't like that, although there are some cases where that is the correct thing. Flip it will make it go from right to left, and then when it hits the end, it'll go from left to right. So I thought continue at the other end sounded best for this. And I'm also doing this an octave up. So there's that one. The other one I have on the other side here is I have basically the same thing, or I guess a similar thing. The probability is a bit different, or I think, but I'm using a marimba sound instead. For this one, yeah, I have the rate. It's also moving, but not quite as much. I used the exact same LFO for this as well. It's also reversed, and this one's 2 octaves up, so it sounds like this. And so I bounced it at about 40%, give or take. And I had this envelope on here. And what I wanted for all of these different pad sounds to come together, I didn't want them all to start at the same time. I wanted one to come in and then maybe another one, and then that first one might start to die down while something else comes in, etc. So it sounds like, you know, things are kind of changing over time, similar to like when you eat something nice and you hear, you know, taste something initially, maybe some sweetness, and then it turns into salty, and then it has maybe a fragrant aftertaste or something like that. So I wanted something similar, but, you know, auditory instead of using taste. After that, it goes here, but there's no effects there, and it just cut off a lot of the low end because I want this to be kind of a light and trebly sound. So there, that's what I have for this. If you listen to it with the pad, I think this first synth pad gives it the body, and then this granular pad gives it more texture like this. So I know sometimes Botanica is also called pedalcore, and so this granular synthesis, this granular pad, this to me is the pedals. So that's how I did that. I'll go over this next one, the glitch backing, briefly. I actually did this, I believe, in the days of Glitchmas. I showed how to make this, but I'll go over it quickly one more time. Globals, I have the global envelope set up like this. In the generator, I have noise. It's set to stairs in mono. And I have the probability at 0.01, so it's very low. After that, it goes into this FX section here. It goes into transform or M-transform. If you aren't using MSoundfactory, you can just do this with M-noise generator and M-transform. I have everything set like this, but this isn't really the interesting part. The spectral settings I have at 1024. I have the level going up, and I just bend this up just a little bit, and that's kind of like compression, I guess. But the most important thing is the transformation. I set it like this. So when you hear it, it sounds like this. So if you turn this FX section off, it just sounds like this. That's like random vinyl noise. The M-transform is what makes it sound like almost like drops, I guess, or glitches. If I turn off convolution EZ, it sounds like this. Not too much difference. But then in convolution EZ, I'm using that vocoder IR. If you watch my previous video, I show you what this is. It's like basically using a vocoder, except I'm using way less CPU. So by adding it, it sounds like this. So this vocoder IR just adds a kind of like phasiness or wateriness to it. And then lastly, I cut off some of the low end, actually a lot of the low end I cut off there. So when you add this to the background of the other stuff, it just adds a little bit of texture. Also, because this is random, I think it adds a kind of organic element and maybe something you don't necessarily hear when you're doing it, or when you're listening to it, but it's just kind of in the background, and I thought it sounded good. I don't know, maybe you disagree. From there, I think I have some risers and things here. I'll show you these. Lots of these other FX and risers I did in a synth. I did it here on this FX creator, and I'll show you how I did all of those. So I just have this. The first part I think is not even from a synth. I think this is just a reverse cymbal. I just pulled a sample I had and just reversed it and put it there. This impact sound, I'll show you how I did this. I have that sound, I have this. I believe that's also a reverse cymbal. This should be a slight variation of that sound. No, it's actually the same one. And this one's same reverse cymbal. And another impact. So let's get into that. For these, I found it was easier just to export these as samples. Actually probably bounced it to audio and then used it that way. But let's go into here. FX Creator. I'll turn this on. I'll play it on my keyboard. And so I think it was one here. Yeah. I have this, and this is just the impact sound. So it sounds like this. Like that. And so I just used two samples here. Actually, I used some EQ. I didn't realize I did that. So I have the first sample. Sounds like this. This is just inside the sampler. I believe it is called, what is it? Dark Noise. So if you have MSoundfactory Essentials downloaded, you can just find it in there under Impacts, Noise, Dark Noise. Perfect. The other sample is called, pop this out again. This other one is, oh, that was Dark Noise. Did I make a mistake? Which one I popped out? The first one, I'm sorry, was called Low War Drum, and the second one was Dark Noise. So Low War Drum was that one. This is Dark Noise. I tuned both of these. The first one, the War Drum, was -1, and this one I left where it is. After that, they went into the effects section. This one, I just, for the low war drum, I took off all of the high end or most of it. And for the other one, I took off lots of the low end and some of the high end. I balanced them using this ratio module. I went into Convolution EZ and put a large, deep impulse response on it. And then finally, I go into M Turbo Comp, which probably boosted the volume, but more importantly, it just compressed things so you can hear that tail. For this, I thought the tail and that noise was really important. So if I take it off, it sounds like this. So it's like, okay, you hear it, but then when I put it on, you really hear that noisy tail, and that's what I wanted. So that's why I did that. That's where that impact sound is. That's where it came from. Let's look at some of the other stuff here. I forgot which order I did all this in, so you'll learn here with me. So let's listen to this, hear what I did. Okay, this one, I was actually really happy with this. I use this as a riser. The very beginning of the song, you can hear this. I did it here. So this is actually a lot of different things, but mainly this is the whole other song. So if you listen to my song Sewazuki, the original one I released last year, that whole song is actually being played here using granular synthesis. Is it this one, I think? Yeah, here. So if we pop this out, I'll highlight number 4, pop it out here. You see here, I have the whole song highlighted here. Here it is down here. And what I do is I scan through the song over time, and I also increase the rate so it gets faster. I dropped it down an octave here, like this, but watch here what it's doing with the individual grains. Yeah, so it just plays the whole song. It's maybe starting at different positions, and it's like having, I don't know, like 10 versions playing at the same time, but they're playing for like 1 second. So I thought this was kind of a cool effect, and I was like, oh, I actually used the whole song to do this. So I thought that was cool. On top of that, I used this oscillator. I think this is just a low note. I just added that in there. This, I have noise, and it just does this. Just a riser. This one, I was also a little bit happy with this one. So for this, I use the Granular sampler, and I'm using, let me go up here. Here it is. Yeah, Metal Plink. So this is inside the MSoundfactory Essentials, I believe. Yeah. Inside Transients Organic. I think a lot of these sound good when you're using the Granular synthesizer. I put these in reverse. Let me see, am I increasing? Oh, I'm using the rate is random, and I have the probability down a bit. I think that's about it. Oh, I'm also adjusting the semitones. This actually makes a big difference. So let's listen to this, and actually, I'll let you see what it's doing here. And look at the semitones too. I think you'll find that interesting. So the probability is stopping it from constantly playing like that, which I don't want. The rate is making it move faster and slower. Of course, I have the volume kind of increasing over time because it's a riser, but the semitones I think are doing a lot of work. If I turn this off, it'll sound like this. So I think the semitones really help. If I turn the rate off as well, it'll sound a little bit more boring. So I think that's okay, but when you add both of these together, to me, that's sounding much more interesting. Also, I set the width here at 38%. If I set it at 100%, it's going to go completely left and completely right, which is not really what I want. Also, this width is kind of randomized, so different grains will go to the right and left randomly. I'll let you hear it at 100%. It sounds like this. That's certainly not bad, but for me, for what I was trying to do, I was like, that's a bit too distracting. It's 0%. That's a little bit too narrow. So I thought about 38, 39% was good for me. And finally, I have the sampler here. I think this is just like noise. Oh, it's just a riser. It sounds like this. Okay. So all these sounds are combined with this riser. I basically just EQ'd them. So hopefully none of them would get in the other's way. I put a convolution on the last part. This is the song Sewazuki goes through this convolution reverb here. It's really short. I don't know why I use this. It's in convolution, but it's not actually using a convolution. It's using a synthetic convolution, but that sounded good to me. And finally, they all goes into the mixer. There's nothing in 6. Okay, there. So let's hear it all together. If you play everything together, it sounds like this. Basically, I wanted it to sound like it's coming right in your face and it's surrounding you, etc. So that's what I was going for with that first riser. Let's go to the next part, see what I did here. This is the thing that's under the impact sound. So actually, maybe it's part of the impact sound. Yeah, actually, it's probably here. So it sounds like this. So let's take a look at what I did. For this, I think it's mostly just samples. I used the first sampler here like this. Yeah, this is just an organic here. What is the name of this? Gonna tell me the name of the actual sample? Yeah, sample is Glass Bits. That's some good looping. That's pretty seamless. I'm not sure if I did that or that was already like that, but anyways, it sounded good. So I just wanted that glass bit. I thought that sounded really good and went well with this. I have this decaying over time. Next part is I have a noise glitch. It sounds like this. This is also in the MSoundfactory Essentials folder. So if you download that, you'll have this. Next part is, this is just in the factory for a drum sampler, Hip Hop Glass. I just turned this Hip Hop Glass in reverse. So if you click this button, it will reverse it. That's all I did there. And then I probably have some delay or something in the FX section. I'll show you that in a second. Next one is I have a beer can. This is also in the effects. I just put that in reverse. I probably also have this delayed. And finally, I have this Chinese symbol here. What I did here, I'll pop this out so you can see it. I'm actually adjusting this envelope. So it starts, or actually it fades in until 221 milliseconds. So just a slight attack on there. And lots of these I actually delayed. I'll show you here in the effects section. Like this, I put a delay on it because I don't want all these hitting at the same time and becoming a mess. I kind of want it to be like one, then the next one, then the next one, and then the next one. So as one's decaying, another one will start increasing in volume. So altogether, they sound like this. I think that's it for that one. I just use the mixer here. Oh, I also use the vocoder IR on not all the sounds, but most of them. The things from row 2, 3, and 4 all together. In D here, this one I use kind of under all the sounds here for FX. Sounds like this. Okay. And so, why did I push that? Wrong one here. So for this, I think I used a few different samples here. I'll try to cut all this off. So one sounds like this. Is it still on? I don't have anything coming out of there. Must not have been using one at all, but basically I have different ratios of this, and it's moving randomly between a bunch of different samples. Let's see if I can turn this off so you can kind of hear what each one is doing. So this should be sample coming out of 2. Actually, turn the delay off too. How's that going crazy? Sorry, yeah. So this is just a sample. I remember I put a bunch of effects and things on there. So that's this. I put this delay on here to kind of give it some length and also some interest. I put this in the generator section because once you stop playing the note, you let go of the note, the delay stops, even if it's in the feedback loop, which is good. Let's see. Next one, can I do 2 and just play it here? This is next sample. This one is wind chimes. Did I even show you what the first one was? Tumbling twigs, which sounds like this. Cool. Next one is Sci-Fi 2. And the last one is Dripping Metal. So I have all these playing at the same time, and basically the ratio is moved between randomly. So each time I hit this, it will trigger a separate amount of each of these like this. And so by using just these 4 samples, I can get a lot of variation out of these so it sounds a bit different each time. After that, I went into the effects section and I used the same M-transform trick I showed you about before with the noise. And I used this, why did I use 2 as well? I don't remember why I did that. So I have it going from 1. Maybe I didn't use that at all. And then I have this, yeah, I didn't use 1 at all. I think I had something interesting there, and then I was like, that's actually garbage. So I got rid of it. But I have this same thing going, I think I showed you before. It's going into the vocoder IR. Even though I have a mixer here, the first one's muted. It's just lane 2. And then I have it going through this, basically doing the same thing, except this is just an LFO going through all of these. And then into M Dynamics, and this is just to make it loud enough so you can hear it. So it sounds like this. So when you do this, sometimes when you hit it, it immediately doesn't make a sound. And that's kind of a problem. So I bounced this out and then I just cut off the silence, and some parts were interesting, some parts weren't. And I took the parts that were interesting and I used them here in this FX section. So it sounds like this. This is a water drop. I synthesized this. If you don't know how to do this, check out my video from maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I did one on water sounds and how to do it in an MSoundfactory, and I show you exactly how to make this water drop sound. That's all I did. I'm not sure if I saved that here, but if you don't know how to do that, that's all I did. Let's see if there's anything else. I think I explained everything. Maybe that's all the sounds here. Oh, here I did just kind of a riser sound, but this, I'm not even sure if I use this for anything. Yeah, so that's just a sound. Maybe I put this in the background here while some other stuff's going, but it's basically just white noise. And that's about it. I'll let you listen to the whole thing together. Besides the reverb. So I use this short studio reverb. You can see the settings here. If you have M Turbo reverb, you should have this. And for the long reverb, I used Randy Hall on the warm setting. And here are all the different parameters. I put a little bit of modulation on there just to sweeten it up. And let's play it one time at the end. Here we go. So that's it. I used M Turbo Comp on here just to do a little bit of compression. You can hear it here. Just like 1 or 2 decibels of compression, nothing crazy. I used M Turbo Compare to kind of compare it to some other tracks in the genre to make sure it was close. I don't know if I got it completely there. And then after that, I exported it out. I put M Spectral Dynamics on it, probably did maybe some slight EQ, and limited it to bring the volume up to speed and do the fade ins and fade outs. So that's completely it, how I made this. I'd never tried anything like this before. I used more layering and probably more sound design than I've ever done in any other song, but I was happy just to have the experience doing this because I'm not sure if I'm going to be full-time Botanica composer in the future, but I think a lot of these things can be used in other songs, and sometimes just a little sprinkle of a glitch sound or some granular pads or something can really add interest to your song. And I don't know if I'm ever satisfied with the music I make, but I was happy to try something new, and I thought it was fun to make, if nothing else, although a little bit tiring. So this song is maybe like a minute or so. How long is this? Yeah, like a minute and 17 seconds. I was like, oh man, this is a lot of work for a minute and 17 seconds. I understand now why most Botanica songs are like 45 seconds long. I think trying to do a 3-minute Botanica song is like, oh man, you're gonna wear yourself out with all that layering. It might make my computer explode also. But anyway, hopefully that gave you some ideas on how to do some of these things. I think if I did it the next time, it would probably be easier. A lot of this was trial and error and things, but hopefully this makes it easier for you so you don't have to do that yourself. If you like this, give me a thumbs up. If there's some question that I didn't answer or something you don't understand, please leave that below. Subscribe if you haven't done that, and check out all the other plugins at melderproduction.com. Till next time, see you.